Good morning, frothers, and welcome back to Wheatlow Brewery. And it's another brew day. It's a quicker one today because we're going to have a rebrew of Theakstons Old Peculier. We did it recently. It was the first iteration, and Richard came down from Theakstons to taste the beer, and we had it side by side next to a real cask of Old Peculier. And it was pretty good, but it wasn't quite there.
Yeah, I think you've got all the taste characteristics of OP, but the tannin is a bit overpowering.
Some people said they preferred my beer, perhaps they were just being nice, but the difference was that the real Old Peculier was a lot more, if you like, sweet, but I'd probably describe it better as a velvety smoothness to it, whereas my version had a bit of harshness, a bit of almost bitterness from perhaps overuse of some of the dark malts. So I've decided to tweak the recipe, have a rebrew, in fact quite substantially change the recipe really, and have a rebrew. And also we harvested the yeast from that pin of real Old Peculier, so I've got the real Theakstons yeast that we can use when we try and make this beer. So we're excited to have another go at this. So let's discuss the difference. So first of all, when we tasted the beer, the colour was absolutely bang on. The head was the same colour, the same structure, the same texture, and the same level of head retention. So that was all really quite pleasingly bang on. The taste was very similar, except for that slightly harsh bitterness. Now, we did have ours in a new wooden cask, so some of that we put down to the tannins, but I did try it later from a metal cask, and it's still got, slightly less so, but still got that slight harsh bitterness to it that wasn't in the real thing. So the thing about Old Peculier is that it's almost like got the qualities of say a black IPA, in that it looks dark and sounds heavy, but when you actually drink it, it's really velvety smooth. It's actually quite easy drinking and quite pleasant. So we want to try and recreate that. So I'll put the comparison of the two malt bills each side of me now on the screen, and you can see what I've changed, but I'll have to go off my pieces of paper to just see that. So we're keeping the same pale malt, which is pearl of course, and then what I thought was that we got far too much dark crystal in there. So we had 4 kilos last time, which was 12.6%. And in addition to the lower colour, medium to low coloured crystal, then that meant there was nearly 19% crystal malt in this beer, probably overdoing it. So this time I'm going for the Thomas Fawcett 130 EBC crystal at 6%, and then just a touch of dark at another 3%. So total crystal malts at 9%. I'm keeping the flake maize, of course, which helps with the head retention, and the torrefied wheat the same. And I'm dropping the black malt, which I used to tweak the colour, and I'm putting a bit of chocolate malt in there. And the reason for that is, although that's still reasonably harsh and dark, the Thomas Fawcett chocolate malt is only 500 EBC, whereas some chocolate malts are 1000 EBC. So Thomas Fawcett, which is the maltster that they use at Theakstons, has got that lighter coloured chocolate. And I thought that the black malt probably gave us a bit of harshness to this beer. So we'll drop that. And then another key change is in the sugar. We used the invert sugar number 2 and some dextrose last time. I'm dropping the dextrose because, looking back on the video, I saw a pallet of invert sugar number 2, and then I saw a pallet of this, and this is TMF caramel colourant. And I've managed to get Rob at the malt millers very kindly source some of this and put it in a small bottle for me, and hopefully that'll be available for all you UK homebrewers as well, because that is the exact ingredient that they use at Theakstons to presumably to tweak the colour. So it's got a lot of EBCs in this TMF caramel colourant. It's very little to no taste at all to it. and it's just made from sugar, so it's pretty natural. It's an old-fashioned ingredient actually from the old days. So I'm going to use that. In my case, I'm just going to put 100 ml in, which is 0.3%. But that will give us the colour without the harshness. So with all those, I'm going to keep the hops, by the way, exactly the same. I was perfectly happy with them. They are the hops that Simon Theakston said he used. So I'm going to keep the hops all the same. And let's see how this beer turns out. Oh, and very excited to have the Theakstons yeast as well. I think that might make the crucial difference. And the other thing that I'm going to change for this brew is that I learnt a couple of things when Richard was here discussing Old Peculier and we were comparing the two beers. I learnt that the OG is 1060 of OP and I had it at 1057, so I'm upping the OG a little bit. And the second thing is that my beer finished at a higher gravity at 1017 compared to the real one at 1014. That might be that I didn't mash for long enough, but I also realised that I didn't perhaps mash hot enough. So I'm mashing at 68 degrees this time, which is exactly what they do at Theakston. So hopefully having fewer crystal malts in there will mean that I've got more conversion from the pale malts rather than the crystals, and then hopefully that'll get the better attenuation. So that might need a bit of fine tuning again in iteration 3, but hopefully we'll move closer to it this time. Maybe I should turn it over. Tell you what, we're getting through the block, aren't we? Super. Right, so 2 kilos of sugar, and we may as well have a look at this whilst we're here, because we need 100 grams of this. Wow, that is black. There we are. So 100 grams of the caramel colourant. Look at that, it just looks like black paint, doesn't it? Just dare I taste it. It doesn't taste really of anything. Right, I've got a nice big hop bag here. Better than those little ones, so the hops can move around a bit as though they were loose in the boil. Turned off the heat. Got 100 grams of Fuggles leaf here. Tie it on so it doesn't get sucked up the bottom. And then we're going to start a bit of a whirlpool. Some of you have mentioned in the comments on some of the previous videos a certain reticence about using these kinds of ingredients, i.e. sugar, and I'm sure some of you will be a bit worried about this caramel colourant as well. And I do understand where you're coming from. In fact, for many years I was grumps about these things as well. For example, if I heard a recipe like this with 6% sugar, I'd think to myself, well, I won't use the sugar, that's a cheap thing, I'll just use all malt. But I think that I've changed my attitude to this for a couple of reasons. One is going around the traditional breweries, and a lot of the brewers, for example Timothy Taylor, said just how important the addition of sugar is to the recipe. Andy Leman said that the yeast is used to the sugar. Also, having invert sugar is highly fermentable, so it kicks it off to a good start, gives it that protective krausen. And invert sugar number 2, of course, gives a slight flavour to the beer. When you taste it, it's got that kind of muscovado sugar taste to it. Now, you may not be able to buy a big block and use it like I have, but you can make your own invert sugar, and there are resources on YouTube where you can see how you do it. It basically involves getting some table sugar, sticking a bit of acid in it, heating it up for a certain length of time to get a certain colour. So it's perfectly possible to make your own. And I would encourage you to try and use the sugars in these beers. We're trying to emulate a beer here in the case of Old Peculier and many of the other beers, and if we don't use the same ingredients as the brewers, then we're not going to get an exact result, are we? Instead of seeing the sugars as a negative, as a cheapening, as a shortcut or whatever, I think now that they're an integral part of some of these traditional beers. So I think give it a try, and the same goes to this caramel colourant. So this was invented as far back as perhaps the late 1700s, but it probably came into wider use in the late 1800s. So it's not exactly a modern chemical addition. This is a product that's made naturally from sugar to give you a very reliable colour addition. So in the old days in particular, when kilning methods would vary and harvests would vary, of course, as they do today, then the colour of your beer might become a little bit variable, and by using an ingredient like this in an extremely small amount, that's 0.3% of the grist bill, so we're talking a minute amount, but it enables you to fine-tune the colour and dial it into exactly where you want it to be. Now, there may be a lot of trad breweries that are using this to just keep the consistent colour. For example, whenever we make Timothy Taylor Landlord with 100% Golden Promise, it turns out a little bit pale. Now, it could be that their internal Calabria in their boiling vessel darkens it, or it could be that for sake of consistency they add a little bit of this to each brew to keep the colour the same. I'm not quite sure in that case, but I'm pretty sure that Old Peculier use it because I saw a pallet of it next to the invert sugar when we went round there. And in the advantage of using this today Also to do with flavour, actually. We don't want to get too much of the crystal malt flavours, and we also don't want to get too much of the unfermentable type sugars that you associate with crystal malt. So crystal malt is a lot less fermentable than pale malt, so that's why it gives you caramel sweetness, body, things like that in the beer. But what we don't want is too many of the dark sort of grain notes in this beer, because although it is dark, it doesn't drink as dark as it looks. So by using this caramel colourant, we're hoping to get a beer of the correct colour and the correct taste. So it is important for the taste as well, because as we found last time, when I used too much crystal malt and then some black malt, the taste wasn't quite right. It was too harsh, too bitter, and it wasn't drinking like Old Peculier. It was close, but it was also quite far, if you know what I mean. Be really interesting to see how this turns out, and I'd urge you not to be too reluctant to use things like this and the invert sugar. And of course, thanks to Rob at the Malt Miller for stocking this at my request. So I guess since I've asked him to stock it, it'd be nice if other people bought it as well, else I might not get my next request for a weird ingredient granted. But that's up to you. Just coming to the end of the mash now, probably half an hour to go. Things are looking good. We're mashing, by the way, at 68.5. 68 was what Richard Bradbury told me. The hops, we're leaving exactly the same as last time. And that is Challenger 8.9 IBUs, Progress 8.2 IBU, and Target 7.2 IBU, all at the beginning of the boil. Some Fuggle at the end, 1.3 IBUs in the last 10 minutes. And also going to do a little whirlpool of Fuggle as well, 3.6 IBU at 93 degrees centigrade, so effectively like a knockout temp, a bit like a hopback up there. And then I've got the Theakston yeast for this one, and we did dry hop it last time with some Fuggle in the cask. I'm not going to do that this time, because when I opened my real cask of Old Peculier, there weren't any leaf hops in there, so I'm not going to do that either. Right, here's my yeast, and as you can see, there's 3 clear layers there. There's a bit of frothy yeast on the top, which is good. There's the cleared wort, and then there's that at the bottom. So I need to get it to warm up and then put some of this malt extract in it, and hopefully it'll be good. And hopefully it smells nice still. Okay, it does smell nice. How's this getting on? So as soon as this boils, I'll just plunge it into this iced water. And and cool it down as quick as we can, and then we'll get it in with that yeast. Right, let's see how we get on with that. Should we check on the yeast, see how it's coming on? Wow, that's exactly what I wanted to see. It's lovely and active, it's getting going. It's almost trying to get out the bucket. Brilliant. Right, so that's cleaning. Well, it's not cleaning, it's sanitising. It won't take long. Let's go check the yeast, which I put in the cellar to rein it in a bit, actually, to stop it overflowing. Ah, there we are. Good that is, isn't it? That looks like it's going, it's cooled down a bit so it's collapsed, but it looks like yeast. If we get a bit of air into it now, might just start up again. Don't like wasting these bits at the top because it's really thick, solid yeast. There's my sip trolley here. It's just a pump on a trolley, but it's really handy to just have that ready to do a clean in place. Got my spray ball here, and these are all my empty vessels are always cleaned immediately. And then when I'm ready to brew, I just do the sanitation loop. It's been going 10 minutes or more now, so I can turn it off actually. And I know I've only put 10 litres in, so should fill this bucket up. No rinse, of course. Once I get that foam like that, that's about it. On there, ready for the next one. There's that. Just undo this and let the excess go on the floor. A bit more than I thought, actually. And this is one of the best items in the whole brewery, a squeegee. I think Ros wishes I had one in the kitchen when I used to brew in there. I've got no floor drains in the brewery, but I have got this one here, which is connected to the foul drain, which is just a septic tank, of course, here. Right, the Old Peculier is fermenting away nicely. There's a bit of a smell of black cherry from that yeast, which is good. It's really hot weather at the moment, so I'm not going to take the whole lid off. Just going to leave these lids open for the open fermentation. Just putting the Old Peculier version 2 into casks, pins behind me. A beer like this doesn't want to be in a 9 really for what little we have. So going for pins. and I've had a little taste. It does taste a little bit nearer to what we're looking for, I think, but we'll wait for it to be ready before we jump to any conclusions. And so I'll finish casking this, seal all the casks up with a bit of finings, and we'll put them in the cellar. Come back in a couple of weeks for some frothing tastes of Old Peculier 2. I'm busy bottling some Old Peculier. I've got a cask of it over there ready, bottling machine, and I'm just sanitising these bottles. I want to bottle condition it. Why? Because this is the Theakstons yeast that I've harvested, and if I bottle condition it, that means I'm going to have some nice safe deposits of yeast in bottles that I can keep around. And also, if I send a couple to a couple of home brewers, they can harvest it and use it themselves as well. So I'm just going to cast this one pin initially, so about 36 bottles roughly. I'm going to put one carbonation drop, one sugar lump type thing in each bottle, seal them up, leave them in the warm. A couple of weeks, this should be about right. It's not been in the cask long, so it's a little bit hazy as well. Normally I'd let it go clear, but in this case, because it's sort of a bit of a yeast bank as well, I'm quite happy for there to be a slightly thicker deposit of yeast on the bottom of each bottle. So I'm just putting one of those in. It does normally say on the instructions use two, but a beer like this, which has got a bit of gravity left in it, I don't think you need as much because it'll get some out of the residual sugars as well. Let's switch on. Right, here I've got a pint of Old Peculier 2, and it's looking pretty good. And I have still got some cask Old Peculier, real Old Peculier, that I saved and put it in a little 4-litre oxybar. and it's still good, which is pretty amazing. Did just prime it just to eat up any baddies and sort of eat up any oxygen that it got into it, but still good. And this is about a month or more later. So, colour-wise, hard to tell in different size glasses, I know, and perhaps with the light the wrong side. I think the colour is not quite as accurate as it was the first attempt. It's very, very similar, but there's a touch more brown to mine and a touch more red, but it's really, splitting hairs. Now, if you remember, the problem with OP1 was that it was a bit bitter. It wasn't quite sweet enough, not smooth enough, not velvety enough to be really drinkable. Let's see how we got on this time. Well, it's definitely a lot smoother, a little bit sweeter, less of that tannin sort of type, harsh bitterness that perhaps came from too much crystal. If I compare it to the real thing, I think we're getting nearer. I wouldn't say it was exact, but definitely a lot nearer. So now we've got the smoothie velvetiness. It is actually quaffable, believe it or not, for 5.6% old ale, which is basically what it is. I wonder if you just push that mash temperature up a little bit more, just get that touch more body and that touch more residual sweetness. There's a little bit more of the hoppiness about that. I didn't dry hop this Old Peculier 2, even though we thought there was a dry hop when we did version 1, and we did dry hop it. We didn't do it because I didn't find any hop leaves in my little pin of the real thing, so I didn't bother dry hopping it. But to be honest, that does taste as though adding the dry hop back in might make the difference. So that's pretty interesting. Now, I've got here a bottle of Old Peculier, a real Old Peculier, and a bottle of my version. And just in case my draft that I've saved in an oxybar for weeks has gone a bit weird, we better check the bottle. So, mine's bottle conditioned, so it's the first time I've tried it. Maybe needs a bit longer, looks a bit flat. Give it some of the pour. Right, the aroma is very similar. How's the colour stacking up? I still think it's just OP2 is just a little bit paler and less red. Now that would imply, I think less red might imply that I've not kept enough crystal in, I think. Would you get red colours from the chocolate? I'm not sure. Or would they be more browny colours? And I don't think the TMF caramel colourant would be red. I think it would be more brown, which is perhaps what we've got here. So I think the colour is not quite as accurate. Perhaps you can't see it so well. I wonder if I can bring a light round. Hang on. Now then. What do you think? Anyway, the smell is pretty much identical. The carbonation is higher on the bought bottle, of course, and that's why it's got this thick head on it. The difference is quite small, but I can still perceive a little bit more. I'm surprised that there's a little bit more hoppiness in the bought one. Now, They won't be bottling the dry. They won't be dry hopping the bottle. So this comes down then to must be something to do with the late hop. So I think if I did this again, I would just up some hopping at the end. Really nice. So I think it's really close, and you wouldn't really mind if you had either beer, but probably because it's showing a little bit more of that aroma from the hop. The bought one might edge it, but then if you're thinking about the smoothness, obviously the cask would win every time. I think we're quite close. A little bit of a tweak on that hopping, and I think we'll be about right. And can we tell that we've used the Theakstons yeast? Now, interestingly, Mark, the head brewer at Theakstons, did tell me that on the dark beers, it doesn't matter so much which yeast you use, implying that it was more important to be particular about the yeast on their paler beers. So, bearing in mind that he said that, then perhaps it'd be difficult to sense a difference between the yeast qualities of each beer. I'm certainly pleased that I did harvest the yeast from the cask and used it. It's an interesting thing to do. I'm trying to save it and keep it going. It tastes absolutely beautiful, by the way, in the Theakstons Best Bitter, which I've also rebrewed using the yeast. Really nice. So definitely pleased with that. So overall, been a brilliant journey with the Old Peculier to try and recreate it and try and hone it in. And I think a couple more attempts and we could get closer. But there is a golden rule about changing things in beer. And I must admit, I don't think I've ever stuck to it. But if you were being professional about this and trying to hone a recipe in, then you really shouldn't change more than one thing at once. If you change one thing, then notice the difference of it, and then tweak something else, notice the difference in it. But if you're changing 2 or 3 things like we have today, so we've changed the yeast, we've changed the amount of crystal malt, we've dropped black malt, we've added chocolate malt, we've added the TMF caramel colourant, and so on. There's too much going on to be able to hone in which change has done what. So if you're going to take a more professional approach than me on this kind of thing, then yes, just change one thing at once. Anyway, I'm going to go and get a cheese board so I can finish all this frothing Theakstons Old Peculier. Thanks for watching. Leave us a comment, give us a thumbs up, like the video, and so on. It always helps to get the channel to new frothers. Thanks for watching again, and we'll see you next time for another frothing ale. Cheers.